Amin, can you please introduce yourself?
Hi everyone, this is Abin. I'm based out of Singapore. Happy to be here this afternoon.
Thank you, Amin. And also I would like to introduce to you Mr. Zul. So Zul is our COO and also is core committee member of AsiaHRM and country lead for Malaysia.
Hi. Hope you can benefit from the session.
Yes. So and thank you. Now I would like to present to you Dr. Ollie Peters. So Dr. Ollie, please.
Okay, can I have my slides up, please?
Dr. Ollie will talk also currently in Cambodia. So,
look, thank you very much. And trying to follow on behind Dr. Nicolai is going to be a hard act. That was amazing. I really like the Katagan model. It sounds very similar to something that we developed in Australia called the Mental Health First Aid, which runs around through Hong Kong and China at the moment. But it talks about bringing people in and using local people and using people's skills and using a strength-based approach. So I'd go, that sounds fantastic. I would only caution, if people are going to be volunteers, they need to be stable themselves. Do not become a social worker. Do not become a psychologist. Do not become a psychiatrist if you're trying to solve your own problems. It will not work. So I'm a social emotional welfare counsellor and I'm currently working for Southbridge International School in Cambodia. Next slide, please. Okay, my background is I've actually been living in East Asia, which is Korea, China and Japan for the last 4 years. And we were working in China. My wife and I moved through to Korea and Japan when we got caught with the COVID, and we had an invitation to come a year ago to Cambodia. And we were actually on the cusp of going back to Australia. And this opportunity came back and we looked at each other and went, let's try that. And it's been amazing. It has been hugely amazing. I've got a professional doctorate in social work, a master's in social work, a bachelor in social work. I've also got a graduate diploma in public sector management. And I became a teacher 2 years ago, so I've got a postgraduate diploma in special needs education. So my background is in working with students in social mental wellbeing. I have run a community mental health centre in Adelaide, in South Australia, for 9 years. I've been the manager. I've had 50 staff reporting to me, including 5 psychologists and 3 psychiatrists. I've got a background in disability counselling and child protection. So all these passions come together, and so you can see me. Next, please. So today we're just going to do some background information on mental health. We're going to do the impact of COVID on employees and employers, the staff stress, the risk at work, the risk at working from home, because everybody thinks that working at home is the grand panacea, the fears, and some practical options that we can employ in the workplace. Next slide, please. I also want to do this from a very Asian-centric perspective. I looked at all the stuff and I had all of this Australian data and this American data, and they said, well, if you're going to do this, you got to do all these bells and whistles and it's going to cost you $1 billion here and $1 billion there. But the truth of it is we're in Asia, we're in Southeast Asia. A lot of these countries are just struggling to pay their bills every week. A lot of these people, we can't do that. So I decided to bring it back and look at what's happening down here. So mental health, we use that term a lot, but we don't actually try and put it into the context of what does that mean for me? What does it mean for you? So mental health in broad terms is used to describe a range of emotional, psychological and social wellbeing emotions which are formed through our life experiences, the way our mother taught us, what we did at school, what we do for a living. And it plays a fundamental role in how we handle stress and how we make choices to relate to others. And that becomes important because the way I handle stress may be very different to the way somebody else does because of culture, because of upbringing, or because of the way we have experienced it. Work is also huge. It can have a huge impact on our mental health. It can define us or it can break us. It can trigger things. You know, whether we have a high status job, a high pressure job, whether we get paid a lot, whether it's a struggle, whether it's an embarrassment, all of these things, what people see in our jobs. And I remember that I had some jobs through my history and people would go, why are you a social worker? And I'd have to try and explain it because it wasn't quite a psychologist and it doesn't quite fit in some of the cultures. Or why would you be the director of a prison? Why would you be interested in working and helping offenders? And really questioning some of the jobs I did. Next slide, please. So mental health in Asia. In Asia, mental health actually has the second largest contributor to the years lost in work through disability. And it's also growing amongst adults. It ranges from 4% prevalence rate in Singapore, 20% in Vietnam, Japan, New Zealand, and Australia. I was very interested to see why it's only 4% in Singapore, because it doesn't sit with that 20%, which is kind of like a worldwide sort of thing. There are also increased rates in China, India, Japan, South Korea, Thailand, and Malaysia. Next slide, please. World Health Organization and the Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development have identified that there are 5 leading areas of mental health problems in Southeast Asia. They're depression, anxiety, and it was interesting to see post-traumatic stress disorder pop up there. But then I look at my experiences here in Cambodia, and people are still recovering from things like the Khmer Rouge, recovering from cyclones, earthquakes, tidal waves, things that we don't experience on a day-to-day basis where I live. Yeah, we had a big fire a few years ago, but we bounced back. And the major studies showed a prevalence of major depressive disorders ranging from 20% in Thailand, 19.9% in Taiwan, 19.4% in South Korea, 17.5% in Malaysia, and 16.5% in China. So they're all sitting up around that very high level. But what happens when you get COVID? Next slide. These are actually the indications of where mental health is sitting in the whole of Southeast Asia. The rates per 100,000, which is the 5.5, 7.8, and the rates, 32. These are the suicide rates. I would like to talk about suicide rates because while I don't place a lot of emphasis on suicide in the area of mental health, acknowledging that it does happen, I think it's a good way to look at the top end of the extreme. And if we say that that is the top of the pyramid, what's happening down on the base? What's happening on the ground floor? If that's increased, what's happening at the bottom? Next slide, please. So according to the World Health Organization, there are 800,000 successful suicides in the world every year. And ironically, or interestingly, Southeast Asia has some of the highest rates. For every suicide, there are also many more people who attempt it. In Thailand, which is known as the land of smiles, there are 53,000 people every year who attempt suicide and are unsuccessful. That results in an economic loss of 13 million American dollars annually. Yeah, there are pre-existing mental health conditions, substance abuse, which also contribute to these reasons. But other reasons include financial problems, matrimonial problems, sexual harassment. For senior citizens, they grow old, they lose their job, they get displaced by their family, they suffer depression, and they have no place in society and they get abandoned. Next slide, please. For young people, it's one of the highest causes of death for people between the ages 15 to 29. Anxiety and depression, again, being common causes, caused by low self-esteem, bullying, dysfunctional families. What's a dysfunctional family? People are always working, people are always busy. People forget what a family is. They forget about connection. Changes in the environment, not just our physical environment, but also our economic environment, body image and high expectations from family. Then there's poverty and a lack of education. Suicide and high risk of mental health issues are common in low to middle income countries, possibly due to the lack of access to appropriate treatment, lack of care, or social stigma. Next slide. So that makes us all feel good. What does that mean for us and COVID? You know, when COVID came out in 2019, nobody really knew what to expect. But after a while, we started feeling things like fatigue, musculoskeletal problems because we were sitting over computers all the time. We were sitting at home, poor work-life balance because we were working longer, all the stuff that Nicola has talked about. And reduced exercise, putting on weight. And of course, the one that we don't want to talk about, increased substance abuse. Doesn't matter whether it's beer, wine, Valium, or antidepressants. Employees reporting a reduced motivation, lack of purpose, anxiety and isolation. And these were just building up, building up, building up. But we didn't just get COVID, it hit us in 2019 in in China, but it hit us here, it hit us there. Then it was all over the world and it didn't stop. And just like we looked like we were about to stop it, we had a vaccine, we were rolling it out, things were looking good. Along comes the Delta variant and it just hits us inside again and we're back to where we were. We've also got a lot of data on previous quarantine experiences where people have been quarantined, and we know that these have long-term effects on people's mental health, hence the post-traumatic stress disorder. It's okay not to be okay. Next slide. Thailand has the highest suicide rate of all Southeast Asian countries. It has an attempt every 10 minutes. In the first 6 months of 2020, Thailand's suicide rate increased by 22%. So we're seeing that if suicide is the top, where the people are successful, that's increased by 22%. If Thailand has 53,000 attempted suicides every year, that's now popping up to something like 65,000. And we've also seen that increase in the Philippines, where it's been an increase of 25.75% in 2020. There's been 3,500 cases of intentional self-harm recorded in 2020 compared to 2,800. So we can see even with the self-harm, where people are cutting themselves or throwing themselves in front of cars and that sort of thing, increase. In Japan, 6,976 women took their lives in 2020. That's a 15% increase in the number of women who took their lives in Japan in 2019. So we can see that there's a direct correlation between COVID and people taking their lives. So there's a direct correlation in stress, in mental health, in depression and anxiety with people and COVID. Next. So a recent survey showed that mental health can reveal that people were emotionally exhausted. COVID didn't stop. Every day you wake up, you look, CNN's talking about COVID. Your work is talking about COVID. Can you come to work today? Can you not? Go and fill in this, fill in that. People felt increased sadness. And we became more irritable because we didn't know what to do. We don't know what to plan. We haven't been overseas. I shared with people, I haven't been home for 4 years, home being Australia. It's just something. I haven't seen my mother-in-law and my father-in-law who live in Korea because we left them in there when we came here. I haven't seen them for 12 months. I miss them. Also, employees started to feel things like other symptoms. Like when COVID outbreak began, they felt these increased symptoms showed up, but then COVID just kept on going and it disappeared, didn't disappear. Next slide, please. So people reported that they were worried about returning to work. They were worried about the exposure of infection. They were worried about maintaining social distancing. It's hard to keep social distancing, especially when you're standing in a shop and the person behind you walks up to you. I was at the local supermarket the other day and this Western guy's walking behind me and he's not wearing a mask. And I feel like saying, put on a mask, but you don't do that in Cambodia. It draws too much attention, embarrasses people. Mental health, stress, burnout to staff, and staff coping with family issues, bereavements. I've listened to one of my staff members at work talk about how he has experienced 8 deaths in his family and he hasn't been able to attend one funeral. And I hear those horrible stories where people have got to watch their loved one dying over an iPad and they don't get to go to the funeral. And so we don't have the closure. We don't have the grief that allows us to put that into some sort of context. And there's a risk of acute stress just becoming common amongst people. Next slide. People who are in self-isolation, coming in from Australia and you've got to spend 2 weeks in quarantine. Being exposed to someone, you've got to spend 2 weeks in quarantine. What do? You lose your routine. You sleep in. Days start to merge together. You just want to get back to some routine. You need to do something. You feel lonely if you live by yourself and you can't talk to anybody. And if you do talk to people, you're talking about it through a knife like this, or you're talking about it because it's COVID and you're just talking about COVID. The wine starts to look good after a while. So people start to increase their substance abuse, and that's where the antidepressants come in, the alcohol. And then there's people who are at home with their children. They've got to look after their children 24 hours a day. Then they've got to put them onto homeschooling. This all becomes stressful. Have you ever tried to see a kid actually stay interested in online lessons for a whole day? And then you get angry with the school because they're not teaching them properly. They're not engaging them. They want some money back because they're suffering financial stress. People say they feel safer at home, but then they start to get worried at home. And so they want to go back to work, but then they're scared about getting to work. And then that employer, their boss doesn't ring them up and say, hey, Dr. Ollie, just ringing up to see how you're going. You've been in quarantine for 2 weeks. You feel forgotten. And then other people say they can do better at home because they don't have to spend an hour travelling backwards and forwards. But you get distracted. I call it Labrador syndrome. There's a noise over there. What are you doing there? Oh, I wonder if there's anything in the fridge that I can eat. Or you put that one off till later because you want to do the washing, the vacuum. You do work well at home. You work till 10 o'clock at night, but you don't stay focused and there's no boundaries. Next slide. So if we look at this on the mental health continuum, we have this left-hand side where people are healthy and they're reacting to normal stress. That's normal for everybody. Most of us get stressed because we get stuck in traffic, we need to do a project, our children are annoying us, wife's annoying us, husband's annoying us, we've got pressure at work, but that's normal stress. Stress actually serves a purpose. It actually motivates us to react so we can do things. But sometimes that goes to the other extreme, or it doesn't stop and it pushes into this sort of brown area and this red area. That's when we start to need to look for professional care. In this red and green area, our friends can help us, we can help us. But if it doesn't stop, it then pushes into a chronic situation. And that's when we need professional help. So what we want to do is we want to get some primary work done at this bottom end. Next slide, please. I've talked a lot about the stress. What about the poor employer? No, does anybody talk about the boss? Does anybody talk about the HR department? Nobody does. But you know what? They've got difficulties too. Have you tried to employ somebody in the middle of COVID? Have you tried to do an interview? Have you tried to follow up? And on top of that, you've got family as well. And workers are ringing you up. I didn't get paid this week. Or when can I come back to work? And then you've got suppliers. You've got business partners. And that government telling you the laws have changed. Can't open your restaurant tonight. Can't open your nightclub. You have to actually check that people are vaccinated before you can let them in. Can't open school today. And they change literally daily. So you're trying to keep up with that. You've got to be the expert. And then financial systems. Yeah, can I pay you next month? Our cash flow is not that great. These constant changes in the spread of COVID, the rules, the regulations, the market challenges. You change those. And the changes in labour law, And employers and managers are under stress, which generates stress for them to get results for everybody else. And believe it or not, they're human. HR people, employers, managers, they're human. They suffer the same problems as well. They suffer, and then they've got to go and smile and listen to that person who's yelling and screaming at them. They also have a critical role because they've got to walk the talk. They've got to show people that the stress and psychological pressure is being managed and they're on top of it because they're not allowed to be human in front of everybody else. Next page. And on top of that, they've got legislation, they've got responsibilities, they've got to carry on like life is normal. But they've got to ring up and they've got to support people at home. Hello, how you going? Oh, Ollie, you sound like you're a little bit drunk. I might talk to you later. Ollie, I talked to you yesterday. You sounded like you had too much to drink. Do I need to worry about you? They're generally checking in on you. But no matter how much they check in on you, the employee is going to feel like they're intrusive or they're asking too many questions or they're trying to get stuff on them because they're starting to feel paranoid. They've got to maintain contact with those people who are also forced to self-isolate. And guess what? We need to train the managers and the supervisors. They need to know about mental health. Suddenly they don't need to know about marketing. They don't need to know about employment law, but they've got to know about mental health. They need to know about depression. They need to know about anxiety. They need to talk and have some basic counselling and some basic interpersonal skills. What if that's not their strength? What if that's not what they do? And then they need to do things like, what happens if someone says to you, actually, I've had depression for the last 20 years and COVID's really knocked me for a six. Suddenly they have to be experts. And on top of that, they also need to know where to refer, when to refer, how to help. And they also need to know the big thing, when to be quiet, when to have confidentiality. Next slide. Employees, they worry. The company's been closed down. The company's downsized. They've changed the work practices. They've got to be flexible. And they're also worried about unemployment. They lost a job or their salary's been cut by 20%. Last week it was cut by 30%. My landlord downstairs, his salary's been cut by 80%. So he's getting 20% salary. He's been getting that for 5 months. And then he owns 7 apartments. Oh yeah, he's rich, he owns 7 apartments. He's actually reduced all of our rent by 25% as well. So he's not getting work or business payment from his work. He's also losing money from his apartments. They still have to be cleaned, they still have to be looked after, they still have to be furnished, they still have to be fixed. So it's not like he's rolling in money. And then people get worried about jobs, income, stress, anxiety, depression, burnout. It just builds up, it builds up. And most of us can handle it most of the time. Some of us will experience it, but it just doesn't stop. It's been going on for nearly a year, a quarter. And then let's go to the media. I think the media is fantastic. We need to know what's going on. We need to know where things sit in the world. We do need to rely on information and facts. But then it just doesn't stop. You know, CNN are doing breaking news coming from COVID in Florida. Yes, there's just been the COVID outbreak in India. It's affecting, people just don't get any break. People have forgotten to celebrate the good stuff. It's Christmas. Oh, sorry, you have to wear a mask and you can't go see your family. Or it's Mother's Day, but you can't travel to see your mother. So people get worried. And then there's all the fake news. You know, you can't use that COVID shield because it's made by the Chinese. You can't use AstraZeneca because it's going to give you blood clots. Oh, by the way, did you know they were using monkey DNA on that one? They haven't actually approved it properly. So we don't know what to do. And then you've got people like Donald Trump standing up there and going, oh, it's the Chinese virus, or it's the Kung flu. And Donald Trump's a very, very influential man. He's managed to get people to think that Chinese people are responsible for the coronavirus. It may have originated in China, but they're not responsible for it. And so what happens is you walk around Cambodia, and if you look a little bit Asian but not Cambodian, they go, no Chinese here, no Chinese. And they actually kick you out of the thing. They kick you out of the shops. Not all the time. It's just the prejudice that's been created. Next slide. Then people need to think about, all right, things are settling down. Life goes on. Coronavirus is not going to go away. COVID's going to be here. Oh, it's just changed again, but it's still going to go there. You know, with people now saying you have to learn to live with it. You have to learn to deal with it. So life goes on. So, all right, we've got to get people to get back to work. That's really hard. I mean, how do you know whether I'm coping better than, say, Mrs. Peters? How do you know that I'm coping better than anybody? How do you know? I haven't been truthful with you. I'm not telling you what I'm doing. And if I am, I'm worried about that because you're going to use that against me. So there's no one solution fits all. We're not going to have this magic silver bullet that covers everybody. We can't just go, everybody's inoculated, they go off to work. Some people believe that the vaccine doesn't work. Some people are anti-vaxxers. Some people believe that it's conspiracy theory. The one I heard the other day is that, you know, apparently Bill Gates gave $5 million towards the vaccine development because he's put little microchips in there that can track us. Microchips are not GPS. You can't track people with a microchip, but that's what people believe. So when we're getting people back to work, we need to actually phase things in. We need to work around individuals. We need to actually have tailored approaches. And employers need to talk to staff. They're not widgets, they're actually part of the solution. People should also be aware, are there any employment arrangements? Do we have any enterprise agreements in place? And employers should be ready to return to work at short notice. They need to be flexible as well. Really easy to say. Next slide. During COVID, employers find difficult challenges on many fronts because of the constant change. Again, we've talked about this. We've talked about the family, the workers, the customers, the suppliers, the spread of COVID, the rules and the change of government. Employers and managers find themselves under strong pressure, which generates stress. And all the time, you've got to look, that smile and go, yeah, I know you've got problems. I know. What, you don't think I've got problems? You're having a bad day. You're the third person who's done that. We need to understand that we also need to look after our bosses. We need to look after the HR section. We need to check because they come in every day. They run around every night. They're the first people on the front line that've got to pick up the mess. At the same time, they've also got a job to do. They've got a critical role in protecting workers from the stress and the psychological pressure that come from the pandemic. Employers should make the workplace as safe as possible. Oh, that's easy, not a problem. You know, they need to do it for the staff, they need to do it for the customers, they need to do it for the visitors, they need to do it for the students. That's easy. They need to be appropriate. They need to encourage staff to return to work or work from home. Which one is it? They need to do risk assessments to identify where risks are. What's the risk? You know, last week it was okay not to wear a mask. Now you've got to wear a mask. What to change? They need to take reasonable steps. What's reasonable? A week ago, you didn't need to wear a mask. It was all over. We were going to be vaccinated. Now we need a third vaccine. You know, how do you keep up with that? They need to follow government directions and directives. Good luck. They change hourly by hourly. We suddenly had a lockdown in Cambodia. And for some reason, last time it was 8 o'clock till 5 o'clock. This time it was 9 o'clock till 3 o'clock. They changed it. And yesterday they suddenly announced that it was over. You know, suddenly they announced one day you can't buy alcohol for 2 weeks. Yesterday they announced you could buy alcohol. They also need to work safely with health and safety staff to make sure they manage those risks. So hard. But to do it, next slide, please. They need to talk with staff. They need to talk as quickly as possible. We're looking to return. Are you ready? Are you on board? Are you going to be part of that? Because again, like I keep on saying, staff are part of the solution. Yeah, they can be a big part of the problem, but if we bring them on board, a problem shared is a problem halved. Health and safety needs to be reviewed and managed. We can't just ignore it. Adjustments need to be made on the run. But also, because staff are at the front line, because they're sweeping up the floor, because they're teaching, they actually have some of the solutions. So we need to listen to them. We need to phase things in. So we need to consult. We need to work together. This is a partnership. It's not a dictatorship. We can't tell kids what to do. We can't tell the staff what to do. And we can't tell the boss what to do. It doesn't work. But we can sit down and say, hey, this is what I think. Good idea, but it's not going to work. And this is why. Next slide. But you know what? We keep on talking about that one size fits all. Not all staff feel like they want to go back to work yet. Maybe they have been away from work for a long time. What we do know from work injuries is the longer you are away from work, the less likely you are to return. So it is important that we don't keep people at home for months at a time, that we do bring them. It was very interesting. Where I work, people wanted to work from home, and my organisation said, actually, no. And everybody angry. Oh, they're creating a risk. They don't like us. They don't care for us. In actual fact, the research shows that they probably did a good thing. They were managing the risk. They were doing all the risk management structures at work, and they were keeping people in work, at work, and they were keeping their life as normal as possible. People are scared about losing their job. They're worried about the socialisation. And then there's domestic responsibilities. This is the thing that we don't know about. You know, I go to work, but nobody knows that I've got a sick child at home. Nobody knows that I'm caring for an elderly mother. Nobody knows that I've got to actually care for the next door neighbour's cat and dog as well. People don't know that about us. They know what we've got at work because, you know, we're always smiling, we're always going on. I was talking to a lady at work the other day, and she shared with me that she's been looking after her nephew for 3 years. And she was 32, she was happy to do it, and it was such a big part of her life. But I didn't know that, and I'd been talking to this woman for 4 months. It was just amazing. Then we've got to work out how we detect the hazards, like not just at work, but at home. Southbridge, where I work, does some really good things. The Royal Group, what they do is they send you a text message every morning. It's really annoying. At least the Sunday one, they leave it to 9 o'clock. And it says, how are you feeling today? What's your temperature like? Where'd you go? Are you caring for anybody that's sick? And you go, yes, no, no, no. And you send it off. And then what they do is you get to work and there's an email. Please fill this in by, what did you do yesterday? Where have you been? And what they do is they're tracking us. They're looking after us. And if you've been anywhere that's been a risky outbreak, they ring you up and say, how are you going, Ollie? Did you do this? How long did you do that? What have you been up to? And they look after us. So they're working with us, not to harass us, but to actually care for us and to manage it and to manage the risk of the organisation. I know some people get offended. Oh, they don't have a right to know that. But, you know, millions of people are infected. Hundreds of thousands of people have died. 2 million, I think, around the world at the moment. I mean, in Cambodia, there are 90,000 people with COVID. There are 2,000 active and 180 people died. Those people have died since April. You tell them, you tell their families that they don't, you don't, your employer doesn't have a right. So we need to do these things. But we also need to think of the individual characteristics of the worker. You know, some people get frightened when they see a spider. I do. Quite happy to have a python hanging around my neck, no problems. But you put a spider within 2 feet of me, I run. I'm not scared of COVID. I am scared of injection. But people also have a lower threshold. Some people get really scared when you raise your voice. Some people burn out when they just think. So we need to think about that. So we need to have a communication strategy, provide information on COVID, on practical issues, hygiene, social distancing, to allay concerns. Let people know we know, but also let them know. Connect with your colleagues. Let your colleagues connect with each other in ways that they haven't thought of before. Maybe have a group chat. Maybe you have a Facebook page for your staff. Maybe you have buddy systems. And you need to provide managers with employees with training. You cannot do anything without the managers or the employees. It will all fall apart. They are central. They are your linchpin. They are the strong point of your organisation. Staff are very, very important. But if you do not have your managers on board, if you do not have your employees, and your employers on board, you can't pull it together. You need to have a staggered approach to return. You need to work it and work around it, around on individual packaging. Maybe a person does have somebody that's got COVID at home. Maybe they can work from home while they're sitting in quarantine. A successful return to work needs to include the role of the manager with everything. So it's not a matter of the organisation saying, tomorrow we will do this. You need to share it with the manager, and the manager needs to talk. And the manager needs to own it. The manager can't stand there and say, don't blame me. I'm just taking the message. They need to say, I've been working with the organisation, and we, the organisation of which I am part, have decided that we would like to return to work, and this is how we're going to do it. We have done that with consulting. Involve people. People need to be part of the solution, otherwise they become part of the problem. Next, company interventions. We should review workload and adjust it where necessary. Maybe we don't need to produce 100 cars every day. Maybe demands drop, we only need to produce 70. So let's slow it down, let's make it easier. Stay connected, contact people on a regular basis, review mental health supports. What do we need in the workplace? Are we doing? What's the mental health showing? What's the data showing? And I provide a report once a month. Whilst I'm a college counsellor, and I'm probably getting about 30 contacts with kids who are worried, but I'm also getting staff who are worried. But they're worried about funny things. They come to me about their employer asking them to do too much, or they're worried about, kids and things like that. They worry about other things, and you have to sort that out and say, what's the problem underneath it? We need to consider flexible policies, and how do we implement policies quickly? Senior teams need to provide messages about mental health and wellbeing. I send out a newsletter to the teachers and one to the kids on a regular basis, a couple of times a month. I said, how are you going? Oh, by the way, you could expect to experience that. That's okay, that's very normal. You're not crazy, you're just plainly normal. But this is what you can do. We should also form internal health networks, ones that help each other. People who actually advise management, people who have got the pulse. We should have champions at all levels of the organisation. Don't just leave it to HR. Don't leave it to work health and safety. Don't leave it to the staff nurse. We're all responsible for this. Next. Okay. So as we do that, we also have issues. What can managers do? What can we do practically? Well, again, we've got this red and we've got this red down the end and green. We can take up the green's the good end, and we've got this stuff in the middle. So most people manage through the healthy reacting area. We lead by example. We get to know our employees. We don't need to be their best friend, but we do need to know who their name is. We do need to know what they look like. We do need to know what they're dealing with at home. We need to connect. That doesn't need to be the general manager. It doesn't need to be the CEO, but the line manager needs to know a little bit about the people they're caring for. I don't speak Khmer, but I got this lovely lady at work who's got this limp. She's a cleaner. And I talk to her and I walk past her every day and we have a bit of a joke. And finally I said, look, my name's Ollie. I don't speak any Khmer. And we finally got it that her name was Born and she's got 3 children. She's 55 and she needs a hip replacement and it hurts. I don't know how I got that out of someone when I don't speak, but we walk past each other every day and we have a smile and we say hello. And she comes in. It's amazing. I've never had the best cleaning in my office since. It's been amazing. We need to also demonstrate genuine concern. We need to connect with people. If there are performance issues, grab the people and pull them up straight away. If you leave it, it just gets worse and worse, and then it's hard to deal with. Advocate for your staff. Be part of them. Watch for behaviour changes. Adjust workload as required. Know the resources. Know where they are. You don't need to be the expert, but you do need to know that the local community health centre does provide a counsellor, or there is a counselling service down the road and it costs $100 an hour. Okay, most people can't afford $100 an hour. They're lucky if they earn that a fortnight. So what do? Maybe we can offer them a subsidy. Maybe we can do something else. We've got to reduce the barriers for people seeking help. We can have the in-house help, those champions, those trains. We talk about the CUSCAR program, and I talk about mental health first aid. We can provide in-house training for people who are suitable, who can do that. Consult with HR and medical resources. And as things get worse, we need to involve mental health resources. We need to respect confidentiality. And that is one of the biggest problems we have, or I've experienced in Asia. I went to have my medical test when I was in China, and they were doing an ultrasound, and suddenly the nurse dropped my ultrasound and yelled out, he's got no, what was it? I had it removed. Gallbladder. He's got no gallbladder. I mean, if it was something really personal, it would have been awful. And she just yelled it in Chinese. I had my gallbladder removed 10 years earlier. I mean, it was no surprise. I knew that. But it was quite funny to watch how the confidentiality doesn't happen. Let's have our mental health champions and our ambassadors, people who are aware and understand the truth about mental health, not the fantasies, not provide staff with resources for stress reduction. We talked about calming techniques. We could have online links. We could provide meditation classes. These don't need to be in work time. They can be in lunchtime, or they could be offered after work or before work. People can stagger, come on in and do them. Or we can provide tutorials, online stuff. There's an amazing amount of stuff online. We can provide links in our, on our school website. Or we can provide people with apps. This is the sort of thing I do with some of the young people who are suffering from anxiety and depression. Inform managers about how they can access mental health and psychosocial support in your own community. What are the volunteer services? What can the local monk do? What can the local church do? What else is it? What family resources can you draw on? How do we make these people resilient? Establish the mental health and the wellbeing resources. Maintain confidentiality about the services you do provide. Not everybody needs to know Ollie's going to see a counsellor. I provide a report to my managers every month about who I see. It's always de-identified. The only person who ever sees my report is me and my line manager. Next. There's no magic in this. Lots of people have mental health problems in their life. Most of us suffer it somewhere. 20% of the population will have a mental health problem during their life. Some of them will be long-term. People just don't tell you. So when they're smiling, carrying on, you just don't know. Mental health at work is common. Try talking to your boss. You'd be surprised how informed and how accepting they are. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Ollie. That's a lot to take in. Thank you very much for your wonderful presentation. So our question and answer is open. So anyone would like to ask, and I'm receive a few requests if they're asking for the presentations of our guest speakers, if they could have it. Is it okay, Dr. Nigli and Dr. Ollie, to share your presentation to the participants?
Yeah, yes.
Sure.
That would be great. Thank you very much.
While we wait for the questions, is it okay for us to take the group photo? Because
Yes.
we haven't done that. So I'll request, everyone to switch on their videos.
The camera.
Yeah.
So we would like to request everyone to switch on your camera so we could have one photo. This is a tradition on AsiaHRM. So every time we have a session, we make sure that we take photo.
Right. This is the most important part, right? Apart from the speaker's speech, the next is the photo.
And then those, I just want to, before we start with our, if you have any questions or if you would like to connect with our speakers, just let us know. And then we have your email address. We will send it to your email address, their presentation. And I would like to invite everyone also, while others are opening their cameras. AsiaHRM, we have a new website, AsiaHR Women's Club, right, Sul?
We are promoting AsiaHRM Women's Club. So, we will share that later, maybe in the next session. And with when Rita is here, founder. And we really hope that everyone who are interested to excel in their career, especially as HR practitioner, to join the Asian Women HR Club.
Yeah, thank you, Sul. And for those who haven't registered as AsiaHRM members, so on the link on the registration, you can check our website, www.asiahrm.com. So those who would like to register and be part of the largest HR community in Asia, please do register and join us on our monthly sharing session. We have a lot of activities installed for members. Hi, Nora Media. Hi, everyone. So I see a lot of old and new faces here, right?
I shared the link at the chat for membership. So anyone interested to join us as a member, then they can click the link and sign as a member.
So Sul, again, just send the link so you can register, those who would like to register and join us. So everybody's ready?
So I've already started taking Larry.
Again, thank you very much for joining us today. So It was great. So I'm pretty sure that you want to know more. So that's where we're going to send you the presentation slides so that you can study it. And if you want to go back on the presentation, you can go back. And if you have any questions, I think Dr. Ollie put his email address on it, so you can direct your question to Dr. Ollie and also to Dr. Nick Lee. So is there okay? So any questions? So if not, we're going to close the session because we take the time already, and I know this is Saturday and everyone today is your day. So we would like to say thank you very much, everyone, and happy weekends, and see you next. And please watch out for our next monthly session on September.
Yeah, thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you,
Bye.
Dr.
Thanks,
Nick.
Dr.
Thank you, Dr. Ollie.
Thank you, Dr. Ali.
Bye. Thank you, Dr.
Bye.
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 안녕하세요.
안녕하세요.
All right. See ya. Thank you, everybody. Take care. Stay safe.
Take care.
Thank
Thank you,
you.
Simon.
Bye.
Thank you.
Bye
Thanks,
to all
Zul.
my classmates. Bye-bye.
Thanks,
Thank
Zul.
you, Gino.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
Sharon.
Thank you.
Eileen.
All right.
Abby tak buka video.
Thank you, Sarika. Thank you,